Hi, welcome to chapter 28. We are going to talk about the cold side of the kitchen now. This is also known as garde manger in restaurants. That is like the salad station, dessert station, cold side, barely have any touch on the hot side. So, except for maybe an oven. Typical items you'd find on this station are salads, sandwiches, charcuterie, cold hors d'oeuvres, and desserts. And this station is essential for all services and all types of restaurants. Before I continue, I just want to note that I don't think that this book went into great detail of what an actual garde manger station looks like in a restaurant, which I know isn't necessarily applicable to all of us in the class. We're in this class to just learn basics and not necessarily go into the restaurant business. But I, as a professional chef, someone who spent a long time in garde manger, I wish there was a little bit more. I did try to find an article or website or diagram or something, that just explains the intensity behind garde manger stations, but I can't find anything. So maybe I have to create it myself. I feel like it's a big task, so I don't think I can do it for us this time around, but maybe somewhere in the future I can do that. Point of that, I just, I have a lot of love for the station of garde manger. There's a lot of um, detail required in that work. It's kind of looked down upon. Sometimes it's like the easiest station in the kitchen just because you don't have raw proteins, you don't have open flames, you don't have a million tickets coming at you at one time, but it requires a different set of skills. So just want to put it out there. That's my 2 cents on the matter. So, anyways, we're going to focus on sandwiches and salads throughout this lecture. And I feel like we're all really familiar with these items. So let's just kind of go through it. Let's go through what the text wanted to clarify. So a couple different types of sandwiches. You have your open sandwiches, like toasts, where it's just one piece of bread, or closed, which includes at least two pieces of bread, one on bottom, one on top. Cold sandwiches, fairly simple to assemble. They can be made ahead. And hot sandwiches have one or more hot components present. So it could be like a meat, a cheese, and these sandwiches are a little more complex and should be served fresh simply because of the temperature. The components in sandwiches are bread, spreads, fillings, and garnishes. So let's go into that. Breads. The bread should be firm enough and thick enough to hold the filling, but not so thick that the sandwich then becomes dry or the customer gets too full too quickly. You want to cover pre sliced breads to prevent them from drying out. Toasting should be done immediately before assembling the sandwich because otherwise it will dry out. And bread variants, rolls, flatbreads, wraps, tortillas. So spreads would be the next ingredient. So, applied to the bread, a fat based spread provides a barrier to keep the bread from getting soggy from the other ingredients that you're using. But spreads also add moisture and act kind of like a glue for all the other ingredients. It what keeps everything together when you go to like bite down and get that uh, good full bite of a sandwich. So I'm sure we're all familiar with these and up to your preference and type of sandwich you're going for. Mayo, different types of butters, mustard or ketchup. So, I mean, a hamburger is a sandwich. Who would have thought? Spreadable cheeses, vegetable herb spreads, tahini, nut butters. There's jellies, like with your classic PB&J, avocado, and oils and vinaigrettes are considered spreads. And as for the filling, this is the main focus of a sandwich. This can be hot or cold. It can be a crazy amount, like our Scooby Doo style sandwich here on the side, or a minimal amount, like a cute little tea sandwich you'd have. It has a very dainty amount of filling, and the filling determines how all the other elements of the sandwich are selected and prepared. So this is when you take into consideration of flavor pairings and texture components. You don't want a sandwich that's all just mushy. So that's where some people, or maybe you do. Hey, I'm not hating. Um, but that could be like the difference of smooth or crunchy peanut butter, something as simple as that. So examples of fillings are meats or other proteins, um, whatever kind of cheese you want, and then all the vegetables. And as for garnishes, so there's two types of garnishes. Garnishes as the sandwich component. So something that's a little more subtle in the sandwich would be like a lettuce or a sprout, or any fresh or pickled vegetables. And garnishes are also seen as side accompaniments. So that is a green salad off to the side, any kind of side salad, potato, pasta, coleslaw, maybe some sliced fruit, or good old traditional pickle spear. Also, any dips, spreads, or relishes that can be paired with the sandwich but isn't on it in its assembly. As for presentation, so kind of briefly mentioned this before, closed sandwich has a top and bottom bread. Your club sandwich is classified by the three slices of bread. So it's like a double stack with that slice of bread in the middle. And the sandwich on the previous slide, I'll just go back real fast. That would be the club. Yeah, it does have three. There we go, just to make sure. And then open face sandwich is just the bottom bread only. So like your avocado toast is actually considered an open face sandwich. And cutting is up to preference. If you can, if it's structurally sound, go for that diagonal cut. It looks just a little different, a little more enticing to the eye. And you want to cut these as soon as or as close to serving as possible. You do risk the ingredients drying out, not only the bread but everything in the middle. And if you are cutting beforehand for like a large event or something, you just want to make sure those sandwiches are wrapped. And make note that any trimmed sandwiches will be more expensive to produce because of the waste. So if you're making tea sandwiches, you will, trim off the crust, and that is waste that either can be utilized in another way, made into breadcrumbs, or it just goes straight to the trash, which is essentially money thrown away in terms of restaurants, and I guess at home too. It all costs money. And for some production guidelines, it's all about organization and mise en place. Mise en place just means everything in its place. That means you have all your ingredients out, ready to go. They're prepped. You got backups. You're set. This is to maximize the workflow by looking for ways to eliminate unnecessary movements. So think of Subway. Have you guys ever been there? Fun fact: I worked there. That was my first job um, in the in the food industry world. And honestly, I loved it. I was there for like 2 years. I was 18. It, was some nice side side money. It's actually what encouraged me to go to culinary school. I just really enjoyed handling the food. I loved, making sure everything was in its place, making sure the sandwich was beautiful. And but what I'm getting to is how they have everything set up, how they have everything. You start with your breads, you then go to the meats, you go to the cheeses, sauces, and then all the fillings, the vegetable fillings. Um, that's what you want to imagine. Like if you had to make a bunch of sandwiches, that is the easiest way to do it. Also, proper tools. So, a sharp serrated knife, any um, like spoons in your ingredients to help you spread, or spatulas, anything that makes sense will help make the job easier. Onto salads. We have a few different types that we're going to cover, and those are green, fruit, warm, vegetable, and composed. So sometimes salads get a bad rep, they're kind of boring. Um, the lettuce is wilty, it doesn't have enough like variety. So let's fix that. Green salads. That's where you find the most. Um, that's when you find people who don't want to have a salad. It's usually green salads because they kind of, sometimes there's not enough to them. I wouldn't lie about that. So First place you want to start off when constructing a green salad, select a lettuce. That could be a commercial blend. So you see those like spring mix, mesclun mix, 50/50 power greens, whatever you are looking for. There's also hydroponically raised greens, that's lettuces that still come in like the little chunk of soil that's on the bottom. And you can also just make your own custom combinations. They do sell just straight heads of lettuce at the grocery store. It might seem a little more intimidating than a pre-cut, pre-washed mix, but you have so much more control here, and that is actually what ends up elevating your salad. You have to start at the base. You have to get a really cool type of lettuce. And you want to make sure that those greens are clean. So trim them, separate them by leaves if necessary, do a cold plunge. So that is, I like to use icy water. So ice cold water, but no ice, if that makes sense. So you let ice sit in the water, but then you strain the ice out and you just have really, really nice cold water to use. And you can do that 1 to 3 times, changing the water as much as necessary. Have a salad spinner on hand to spin dry. That's definitely the best method to go. And if you don't, just air dry onto towels or paper towels, but it will take a little longer. And whole point is we don't want gritty salads. Lettuce grows straight from the ground. It has typically a lot of bugs and fine dirt in it, sand. So make sure you're just really taking a lot of time here and prepping your lettuce as necessary. And then as for storage, definitely keep it refrigerated. If you have it in an open container, just cover that with a damp paper towel or give it like a nice good wrap in plastic wrap, or just use a sealed container. That works. Additions here to green salads would include dressings and then garnishes, which vary widely. That could be an added protein, a cooked grain, croutons, other vegetables, fruits, nuts. My goodness, the list could go on and on. So, fruit salads. This also has a variety of characteristics. Typically, the base is a medley of fruits. Hopefully, they all pair well nicely together. And then in this picture here, I couldn't find like an attractive photo that had a sauce, but usually there's like a creamy base sauce that goes with it that's slightly sweetened. Maybe some citrus juice, or maybe you're putting a little sugar on this to create the salad's own syrup with all the fruit flavors present. And you could add herbs, nuts, anything that honestly that you think makes sense. These salads are typically highly perishable. Fruits are a little more sensitive than vegetables, so make sure you're prepping them close to service. And use acidulated water on fruits that will oxidize. So that pretty much means any fruit that browns when you cut it, like when you cut an apple or banana, pear. There's a few others that you'll notice a discoloration after you cut it. If you make acidulated water, which is just a little bit of water with a little bit of an acid, and that could be a mellow vinegar. Careful with the vinegar though, because that flavor can come through if the fruit flavors are on the lighter end. So you might want to use citrus juice instead. So a little lemon juice goes a long way. And for preparation, just make sure your fruits are cleaned. Trim them if necessary, cut into bite-sized pieces, and if you're making a head, just refrigerate until serving. As for warm salads, which might sound a little weird, but actually, like, they are so pleasant to eat, especially when it gets a little colder. So the methods here are tossing the salad ingredients in a warm dressing, or you can use, the difference between components being a different temperature. So you could use a chilled salad and add a hot protein to it, or roasted vegetables. So there's just like the contrast in temperatures while you're eating it, which makes it a little bit more interesting and complex. The intention here is that the salad should be warmed through. The contrasting temperature differences provide a unique experience. And then, like I mentioned earlier, this makes salads a little bit more approachable during the colder months. In the dead of winter, you don't necessarily want like a light, crispy, refreshing salad. You kind of want something a little more hearty, a little more warming. This would be a good option. As for vegetable salad, so this is everything about like a green salad, just without the greens. So, um, primarily like heartier vegetables. Make sure that they are cleaned, trimmed, peeled if necessary, cut appropriately. So, in bite sized pieces, preferably, and cooked if necessary. That would be like green beans, maybe like a thicker asparagus, anything like that. And dressing methods is dependent on the types of vegetables used. So if um, if you are cooking the vegetables while they are cooling down, you could dress them while they're warm, so there's a better absorption rate, and you would see that in like denser vegetables like carrot, potato, or beets. However, if you're working with a more sensitive vegetable, you want to dress closer to serving to prevent any discoloration. So you would see that with like any delicate vegetables like broccolini or asparagus, or just green vegetables in general. Green vegetables versus acid equals murky, swampy green brown colors. So avoid that. Potato salads. Tricky cook on the potatoes. You definitely want to make sure that they are completely cooked, but not overcooked, tender, but not crumbly. So, just monitoring them while they're cooking, making sure that you're tasting them, taking them out of the water, cutting them, eating them, making sure that, imagining as they cool down, are they going to be just slightly under? Do they need a little bit longer? Something like that. So, just be attentive when you're doing that. And if you overcook them, just make mashed potatoes, call it a day. Also, another tip, use high moisture potatoes that hold their shape, and those are waxy potatoes. So, as you can see in this little photo, I included those are like those red potatoes, purple potatoes. These are peewee potatoes in the background, anything like that. Your Idaho potatoes are higher starch, so that is actually preferred. Use those for mashed potatoes. That's better. They're going to be nice, fluffy, dry. You can add like a lot of liquid to them. But yeah, potato salad is typically served cold or like slightly warm. So you want to make sure you have a potato that actually can hold its shape. As for pasta and grain salads, definitely make sure that grains and pastas are fully cooked but not overcooked. So kind of like the potatoes. You have to imagine that as you dress this salad, if it's going to sit for a little bit, it does continue to absorb liquid around it. So if it is on that on the cusp of being overcooked and it is then dressed for any amount of time, it will start to break down and the noodles will get in smaller pieces, and then that's just not what you want. So just make sure you're hitting that sweet spot in that al dente area of pasta and grains. And as for seasonings, so again, if this is dressed ahead of time, just make note that flavors do mellow out over time. They are being absorbed by all the ingredients around it. So taste and adjust as necessary. And the use of vinegar, herbs, citrus juices, and salt. Of course, salt is goes a long way as well. Can give a brighter flavor. As for legume salads or bean salads, when you are cooking the beans, take into consideration how they will be served. If they are served at room temperature, make sure you cook them until they are tender. Um, They definitely need to be slightly overcooked if they're going to be served chilled, though, which might seem wrong, but it's not, because if those chilled beans come into contact with an acid over time and they're undercooked over time, they will actually get tougher. So you want to take them a little further than you feel comfortable with, because that is actually what's going to provide like a creamy texture for the salad that you're putting them in. And if you have a salad that calls for multiple types of beans, just cook them separately. They all, especially if they're all different shapes and sizes, they're going to cook unevenly if you put them together. And there's no way you're going to fish out the ones that are done and leave the ones that aren't done. And just do yourself a favor. It might be a couple pots going at a time, or plan ahead and, give yourself enough time to cook multiple types of beans so you're not rushing at the very end. But that's very important. Also, season the cooking liquid. The beans spend a long time in water. Add whatever you want. Definitely some salt, though. Trust me. And like I kind of mentioned already, beans will not soften any further after cooking. So, unlike grains and pastas, beans will not soften by absorbing any liquid that's around them, and the acid makes them tougher. So interesting. So, just a general note, bean salads should not be dressed and allowed to sit for more than 4 hours. Or, sorry, just for extended periods of time in general. And I kind of emphasize that even 4 hours will make a difference. Composed salads. So, I thought that this picture was visually interesting. I do hope those beets are cooked because it kind of looks like they aren't, but I just thought this kind of served a good purpose to showcase the variety that this salad has and how visually interesting this is. Um, we eat with our eyes first. That's why when you go to a rest, that's the main difference between restaurants and home cooking is that at home, it's kind of a means to an end. You're not necessarily looking to impress yourself. Sometimes you are, maybe all the time, who knows? But in a restaurant, they have to impress you. They have to make your worth your money. So they are plating things specifically to make them look visually interesting as it's walking or as it's making its way over to you. You want it before it's even hit the table. So some guidelines to get your home cooked salads or home assembled salads, I should say, um, to the level of these restaurant quality salads. So consider the elements of the salad combining. You want to contrast flavors that are intriguing, and you want to avoid any conflicting flavors. So the best way to do this is to try your salad out. Like you might have an idea of like what will taste good together, but then when you go to taste it, it's not as you imagined. So it's just a lot of trial and error. And there's also a couple books out there that professional chefs have that help them do this. It's kind of like an encyclopedia of flavors. And I will include this at some point during the rest of the course. And another guideline is consider the repetition of color or flavor. This is a tricky line to find here, like a middle ground. You can successfully do this and it contributes to the overall dish, or otherwise, the general rule of thumb, too much of a good thing is just too much. So you're going for that monochromatic look, that look that would look really cool as long as everything makes sense together. Don't add ingredients just because it contributes to this overall theme you've got going on, but it doesn't actually make sense with the other components, if that makes any sense at all. And just make sure everything has a purpose and all the intentions are aligned. I know it's kind of silly to sound like a salad takes so much effort, but it really does. A good salad takes a lot of effort. And make sure that each element of the dish should be able to stand alone. So then that when all of the elements are combined, they actually enhance each other and they create this like really cool combination. And number one thing I think that salads need, and it does so much, is just the how you plate it, making sure that you're tossing the lettuce greens in the dressing. If you plate everything, if you plate a dry salad and then just put dressing on top, it starts to weigh the salad down. It's not all even. It doesn't provide like the best eating experience, in my opinion. There's some exceptions to the rule, like a wedge salad, that is how it is served and that is how it makes sense for that style of lettuce. But typically, if it's mixed greens or, your larger leaves, go ahead and dress it and make sure there's an even dispersal of components. And something to focus on is height. A tall mound of salad definitely looks way more attractive than a flat mound. So I think that is it. And thank you for sticking with me through this one.